Hey, what's up? This is Todd Smith. I'm back with another video. We're dropping in with a tips video. My 5 top tips to help you keep loop-based music interesting. Keep the user involved. Loop-based music by default is kind of boring and kind of bland in the sense that it just loops. So you have to do a little bit of work in there to keep some interest, to keep some variation, to kind of break out of the grid, to break out of that pattern, and to draw the listener in. But before we get into this topic, I need to thank you for even taking the time to click on this video and getting this far. Because without your views, Patreon support, Bandcamp sales, I would not have the motivation to do this pretty much every single day, push my dreams forward, and I can't thank you enough for that motivation. Obviously, there's more than 5 tips out there to help make your music more variant and more interesting to people. But this is the top 5 I would say that you see me apply to a lot of my music, my live jams all the time. And I would argue my best live jams, my best music is when I'm applying all these things in one song in a lot of various ways. The first thing you can really do to spice up loop music is start playing some live keys. It's something you see me doing all the time. Just playing a live pad, a live lead, adding some strange sounds here and there live via keyboard, not sequenced into the grid. Add some humanity there. It adds something coming from you, coming from an actual person, not a grid off the machine. So that alone, just grabbing some keys or start triggering some stuff live, not having it all on the grid within the sequence, will really start to bring some interest into your mix. And the more you play, the better you get, the more you can do. Again, if you watch this channel, live keys is something I add to a lot of my stuff. I personally love the keyboard, but I think it can be any form of triggering by you, whether that be pads or something else. I would say the second tip you can really use to really create interest in your music is layering. And not thinking as layering in more layers is better, as in the sense of layering to change the sound and create the landscape. Like maybe a good example is maybe during a driving force part of the song, you might add a few layers to the bass to create a thicker, crunchier sound. But then when you fall back to the more calm aspect, you remove a few layers and just have a smoother sub bass to kind of ride you into that more aggressive section. A lot of people, when they think of layers, they only think of adding layers. Layers in the sense of just playing with layers, add this here, subtract this there. Swap between the sounds, swap between the sequences, see how it sounds when you're doing this. It can create mood changes that wouldn't be there that if you did not play with layering at all. Layering is one of the most important aspects of electronic music, and playing with it in as many ways as possible is something you need to do. The next tip would be manipulation. Manipulation of filters, manipulation of effects, manipulation of LFO, any parameters. In the synth world in general, we are lucky to a lot of times have a lot of things with knobs. We can just grab parameters and rip them apart. Do that. Use that ability on the things you have. Do it while you're swapping patterns, while you're switching around with things that you have, while you're live playing, while you're layering. If you start playing with various patterns that are chained together, that have various levels of layering and intensity, and you're live playing and you're doing filter sweeps on top of it, and you're triggering in some strange samples or sounds, you start to bring in a lot of variant aspects of live playing that we're talking about that wouldn't be there if you're just throwing it into a grid, pre-recording a few knob movements and go. So manipulate as much as possible, experiment as much as possible during the building phase. Number 4, I've already mentioned a few times already, and that is pattern variation. Creating variant patterns for your drums, variant patterns for your bass. And constantly swapping within the mix of your song is going to create a lot of interest in the sound. Now, just because you're switching patterns a lot doesn't mean the sound is drastically changes. It could be even just little changes. That depends on the song. But sometimes those little changes make a huge difference. And last but not least, the biggest tip I can just give to you guys for creating interest is random sounds, random crazy stuff. You hear it all the time in my music. I'll just hit a key and some random strange sound just with a long release kicks through and just kind of like echoes through a bar or two and then fades away. Playing with random kind of effects, one-shots in the background that come in at random locations, random times in the songs, can really add a lot to the mix. I tend to use strange, evolving sounds. It could be a voice sample with some delay on it, just something that you're cutting into every once in a while in the background. Something that you can trigger then, if best, not on a sequence, something you trigger manually so it just becomes random and something you feel out. To me, I found assigning one synth as a strange sound synth that creates that background kind of weirdness adds a lot to my music. And that's really my 5 steps that I try to add to the best of my best jams, the best of my best songs. When I'm really pushing something hard, that's the equation I try to mix together and get going good. If this video gets enough support and enough people show interest, I might do an individual breakdown for all these parts, a video per each, because I can definitely go into each of these and really focus and talk more. But I kind of wanted to do a generic YouTube top 5 video about the topic to begin with as a starting point and see how it goes. There's a lot of new people entering the synth game, so I hope it helps you guys kind of start crafting some sounds, some stuff that you enjoy. It took me so long to really find my vibe in the synth world. Once you find your little groove, it's so great to be able to get lost in your own little world. And if you have your own little tips that you use to keep people interested in your loop-based music, drop them down below. Love to know. As always, stay positive, stay creative, support each other, and peace.